All right, so in this video, we're going to use AWS Amplify with Amazon API Gateway, AWS Lambda, and Amazon Cognito to build an authenticated API gateway into a Lambda function using a Cognito Authorizer. Now, essentially what we want to accomplish here is we want to make it to where when we make a request to a certain path that we check to see if that user is signed in. And if they are signed in, we authorize that request. But we also want to make it to where the identity of the user or the identity of the caller is available in the Lambda function in a secure fashion. We do that because we want to, authenticate the user before they're able to access the function. And B, we want to be able to do stuff like fine-grained access control and authorization within that function in a database or however way you might be implementing that. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video, and we're going to be kind of creating a brand new project from scratch. We're going to be, configuring the project to enable this. We're going to log out the user in CloudWatch, and then that'll be it. We're not going to really actually go into working with the database or anything like that. I think the main concern here is how to create this authorizer and how to do it with API Gateway and Lambda, and how we can kind of get the project going with Amplify. So that's what we're going to cover, and I hope you learned something. This was a topic that I had to dive into a little bit to kind of learn how to do myself. So I thought this would be a good video to kind of show other people how to do. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started by creating a new React project. So to get started, we will use npx to use npx create React app. And we'll call this something like React REST auth, something like that. And while that's being created, while the React app is being created, we'll change into the new directory and we'll just initialize a new Amplify backend. I'll just kind of take a lot of the defaults here and I'll choose React. And I will choose my default IAM user or AWS profile, which is for me, US East 1. And this is going to, initialize our Amplify app. And what we're going to next do is go into our front end code, install a couple of NPM dependencies. And then in our Amplify backend, we're going to add authentication, we're going to add a function, and we're going to add the API. So we'll change into this new project and we'll just use Yarn or something like that, or Yarn or NPM. And we'll add AWS Amplify and at AWS Amplify /UI React. All right, and once the dependencies are installed, we'll just open up our project in our text editor and get ready to start writing some code. So I think I'm going to open app.js and index.js. Those are going to be the two front-end files we're going to be working in. Next, I'm going to go into my CLI and I'll run amplify add auth, and we'll just take the default settings to add authentication. So I'll say default configuration, username, and then no, I'm done, no more advanced settings. So we've added authentication. Now I'm going to run amplify add function, and we're going to add a new Lambda function. For the function name, just kind of start with the same name as our project. I will choose Node.js. I'm going to choose a hello world function. And I don't need any advanced settings, and I'm not going to edit it just yet. We'll go back and edit it in just a moment. So we've added auth, we've added the function. Now we're going to add the API. To do that, I'll run amplify add API, and I will choose REST. Give the API name, and for the path, this can be whatever you like. I'm going to call this something like basic/hello, and I'm going to choose a Lambda function that is our React REST auth function. For restricting API access, for our example, this actually doesn't matter a whole lot because basically the whole idea here is we're going to be overriding this API access by enabling a Cognito Authorizer. So I'm going to just choose yes. I'll choose authenticated and guest users. I'll give authenticated users like all access and guest users maybe like read access. But this doesn't really matter but we're going to be overriding it anyway, but figured we just go ahead and set something up. What we want to go ahead and do now is we don't need any more paths. We have all of our backend stuff set up. Now we need to do a couple of things. We want to go into our backend function code and kind of write a console.log so we can log out the identity of the caller. And that's kind of going to be kind of how we're testing this out. We're just going to log it out and view it in CloudWatch logs. So to do that, I can go into the function code itself and amplify backend/function and the src/index. The first thing I'll do is I'll uncomment the headers. And I want to do this because we want to enable cores. And then the next thing we want to do is we basically need the event that request context. So I might say if event.requestContext.authorizer. And what we want to do is check if this authorizer is there. And if it is, we're going to log out the claims, which is basically the user information. And either way, we just want to return like a response. So we're just going to return whatever the default response is. Hello from Lambda. We enable cores with these headers, and we're kind of good to go. So I can go ahead and save that, and I will run Amplify push to go ahead and deploy our backend. And while that's deploying, we'll jump back into our front end. And in index.js, we want to configure Amplify. So to do that, we import Amplify from AWS Amplify. We import the configuration created by the CLI at AWS exports. And then we call amplify.configure, passing in the config. The next thing we'll do is we'll go into app.js and we'll create some API call from the client to call the API. We also need to be authenticated, so we're going to set up an authentication flow using the with authenticator component from UI React. So let's go ahead and import API and auth categories from AWS Amplify. We're going to also import the with authenticator. From AWS Amplify UI React. And then for the default export, we'll just make this the with authenticator wrapping the app component. So this is going to put that authentication flow in front of our component. The next thing we might want to do is update our component. We need a function to call the API. And I will connect this function to like a button or something like that. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we need to get the identity of the caller. So that is the signed in user. So I might say const user is equal to awaits auth.current authenticated user. Okay, so now that we have the user, what we want to do next is create some headers, and then we're going to say, const data is equal to awaits api.get, and we're going to pass in the API name, the path, which is like /hello. And then we would need to pass in some request information, which is basically the headers and stuff like that. And then we will console.log this data. And if this comes through, that means our authorizer is working, and we made the request and it successfully ran. So what we now need to do is get the ID token off of this user. So I might say const token is equal to user dot, I think it's sign in user session. And then we're going to get the ID token and then the JWT token. And then we'll just log out this token to make sure that's where it's at. But you could also log out the user to get to where this token is if you've never done this before. So we'll log out the token just to make sure it's there. And then what we want to do is have some request info or request data, whatever you want to call this, could be anything. We want to put some headers, and we want to set the authorization header. And the authorization header just needs to contain the token. And then we pass in this request info as the third argument to our API request. And now we are making an authenticated API call from our client app. So we'll go ahead and maybe minimize this a little bit so we can fit a little bit more on the screen. And the last thing we want to do is just pass in the API name. So we should be able to go to AWS Exports, see the name of our API in this configuration file under the AWS Cloud Logic Custom. Paste that there, and now we're ready to go on the front end. The next thing we want to do is go into the AWS Management Console. So to do that, I will just go to console.aws.amazon.com, and we're going to go configure our API Gateway configuration. And to find API Gateway, you can just type in API Gateway into the search bar, shows up, and then you should be able to click on the API we just created a moment ago. So what we want to do here is click on Authorizers in the left-hand menu, and we're going to click Create New Authorizer. We'll give the authorizer a name. I'll call this something like Hello Auth since we're working with that /hello path. We want to set the Cognito as the authorizer type, and we want to pass in our Cognito user pool, and it should be something along the lines of the name of your project, your front-end project. So React, I think REST Auth is what we called it, and it would be the name of whatever you called yours, appended with some unique identifiers. And then for the token source, we want to set this as authorization, because basically this is going to be where this is coming from in the header. So we're going to be passing an authorization header, so we'll use authorization and we'll click create. So now our authorizer is created, and we're going to configure it with our actual endpoint. So click on resources, and then click on any under hello, and then click on method request. And under the authorization configuration, we're going to add our authorizer here. But when we click on this pencil button, you notice that it might not show up yet. You might need to go ahead and refresh to kind of make it show up. So I'm going to do that. And now when I click on authorization, we should see that it shows up here. So I'll click Hello Auth, and now we have our settings configured, so I can click the check mark, and now we have our authorizer configured as the authorization mechanism, and it's going to be applied to all of these paths. So /any is or /hello any is basically going to be applied to any request. So get, put, post, delete. If you wanted to define a specific action, you could kind of create an action and do all this for just that route if you would like to do that. So to deploy this, I can go ahead and click under Actions and click Deploy API, and we'll choose the dev stage for dev and deploy. And now we should be good to go. And the next thing we can now do is test this thing out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to type in npm start. And when our app starts, we should now see our sign-in screen. So I'm going to click Create an Account. Go ahead and create a new account. And check my confirmation code. All right, now we're signed up and signed in. So I'm going to go ahead and inspect, and what we should be able to do now is make this authenticated API request. So I'm going to go ahead and click Call API, and we see that we have data, hello from Lambda, come back. Now this is great. That means that nothing is broken. So hopefully what we can now do is look in our logs and see the identity of the caller. So to do that, I'm going to go and I'm going to run Amplify console. And I'm going to choose Amplify console here. And this is going to open our project up in the Amplify console. And if I click on functions, I should see a link to View in CloudWatch. But we're actually already seeing the logging here. We have this claims object, and it has all the information. But let's maybe view it in CloudWatch as well, just to kind of get an idea of how this works. If I click on the log stream, and we go down to maybe the second or third piece of information here, we see that we have the claims, and now we have all of the information about the user. So we have their sub, which is like their subject and it equals their unique identifier for this user. We have their Cognito username, dabbit5. We have the phone number for them, and we have their email address. So we have all of that information here, and we are good to go. Now let's try something else. Let's delete this log stream, and let's now make this API call without passing in this request info and just see what happens. We see that now we are not able to do this because what we just set up is we're basically saying this user needs to be authorized and we need to pass an ID token or else this is going to fail. So if we go back and we uncomment that and we pass that ID token back in there and we try this again, then it works. So everything is working as expected, and that's kind of how you set up an authorizer with API Gateway, Cognito, Lambda, and AWS Amplify. Now, I hope you learned a little bit about how this works, and I hope you kind of understand how API Gateway kind of does a lot of the stuff around Cognito Authorizers, because to me it was kind of, a topic that was really hard for me to get up and running with and confusing. So hopefully this kind of boiled it down into something, understandable, and you learned a little bit. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not already, and look out for more videos coming soon. Thank you.